Richard Burgess, also known as Vegan Gains, has told some lies about me. I don't really know if those would be considered defamation in a court of law, and I don't really care. I'm a Canadian citizen. Richard is a Canadian citizen. I have experience with defamation cases that drag on in court for many years. I have no interest in suing Richard whatsoever, and I'm not even really interested in the hypothetical thought exercise of how the Canadian system of law would judge this case if I were to make an issue of it. But, there's also this thing called the code of the streets. And for one grown man to say that another grown man is a snitch is kind of a big deal, Richard. For you to say that I called the cops on you, for you to say that I doxed you, that's kind of a big deal where I'm from. And where I'm from is the same goddamn place you're from, downtown Toronto. I don't think Richard is lying. I think Richard is insane. I think Richard doesn't know the difference between fact and fantasy anymore. And I'm going to read you his emails. The emails he sent to me that prove not only that this is a lie, a fantasy, that this is completely, utterly untrue, but that it is actually a fantasy he made up in his head relatively recently. It doesn't go back 5 years. It doesn't even really go back 3 years. We're going to be able to see the etiology, the step-by-step process whereby he started concocting this fiction in his mind. And based on what he said himself on his own YouTube channel, I would assume his wife has also been involved, even if it is just that she's egging him on, that she's just encouraging him to get deeper and deeper into this illusion. And Richard, let me just ask you to use the golden rule here for 1 fucking second. How would you feel if our positions were reversed? How would you feel if someone else were saying about you on the internet that you had doxed them, that you had called the cops on them and got their door kicked down and got their house searched and got them involved with legal charges and questions that carried on for years? And you had the emails to prove that this wasn't true, that the person saying that about you, really, they were just kind of crazy and unhinged and not in touch with reality. How would you feel, Richard, if our positions were reversed, or if it was someone else saying it about you? What is morality? Morality is not about the remit of what can and can't be enforced in a court of law. It's about what matters anyway, what's important to us anyway, once we get into arenas where no policeman and no lawyer is ever going to tread. I have to ask myself a lot about what is the moral thing to do in my relationship with my own mother, with my own brothers and sisters, right? What's the right thing to do? Pulling together, a totality of circumstances going back decades. And then here you are at any given point, you're only alive in one moment in time. What's the right thing to do? What's moral? There's never going to be a court case. You're not going to sue your brother or your cousin or your uncle or something. You're not going to take your own parents and bring them to court for being jerks or whatever. And you've got to examine your own feelings and your own sense of justice and injustice and your own defects of character, your own pride and your own arrogance. You know what I mean? And I think you can neither apply a kind of legal framework to these things, nor what I've just alluded to as the code of the streets. You know, morality concerns exactly these questions of what kind of personal integrity we're going to demonstrate when nobody is forcing us to, right? When there's no compulsion, when there's no fear of consequence. When I look at Richard, you know, he's not extraordinary. I've known a lot of people who, in the same way, just make up stories in their own heads. And after the passage of time, they start believing those stories. And it becomes very difficult to talk them out of it. Even when you can show them these days, you can show them emails from 5 years ago, or you can show them emails from 10 years ago, or you can point out, no, when that happened, I was in Hong Kong or I was in Taiwan. It's not possible that I was there at that time. It's not possible that I did this at that time. When you can point that out, I have had a lot of experience with people who are not considered legally insane, who are not going to be put into a lunatic asylum, you know, where they are in this more informal, everyday use of the word, where they are garden variety crazy, you know, and under other circumstances, obviously years have gone by with this, I would have no interest in proving to you or proving to Richard or proving to the world that Richard Burgess really is crazy. Is Aaron Janis a good leader for the future of the vegan movement? Is Freely, the banana girl, a good leader for the future of the vegan movement? Is Durian Rider, is James Aspey a good leader for the future of the vegan movement? In each one of these cases, you're making a judgment that at least in part deals with the extent to which these people are sane or insane. I have no hesitation in saying to you today, Richard Burgess is a terrible leader for the vegan movement. He's a terrible influence on veganism today. And I only see his influence becoming worse over time. I've had to talk about this with a lot of different people in my life. There are friends, relatives, and I have people in my family who aren't really my blood relatives. You know what that is. They're a cousin of a cousin or something. Someone who's called your aunt, but is really just a friend of the family. When I talk about that network of kind of long-term friends, family, and acquaintances, there are a lot of situations where people have talked to me and said, like, oh, this person is having mental health problems now, and they went and got help, and do you think they can get better? Do you think they can improve? And every single time, sorry, and also, I've been married and divorced. So when you get married, you kind of gain a whole other family. In my case, temporarily. If the marriage lasts forever, it's permanently. But you gain other relatives through the marriage and stuff. And every time there's been one of these situations, what I've said to caution people is, yeah, some people get better. But let me tell you something. A lot of people, they get worse and worse and worse until the day that they die. So a distant, so-called relative in this sense, I don't think I have any DNA in common with this guy, but I was recently reminded of him. Not worth telling the story why. And so he was someone who knew my father, and he's very, very elderly now. And I remember seeing him at family functions when I was a little kid. And I can remember then when I was, I guess, a teenager, people started saying that he had gone insane. And I've always been cursed with this kind of sharp memory. I was like, no. I can remember back when I was 6 years old, he was already insane. I know you guys may perceive it as if it's senility or as if it's just now. And then, some years after that, I'm in my 20s, and people are telling me he's gone further insane. And then when I'm in my 30s, I hear he's actually got in trouble with the police, and there's talk about putting him into some kind of home, whether this will be a voluntary old folks home or some kind of involuntary psychiatric care and so on, And I just mentioned that was somebody I knew from childhood. And it was like, well, I'm not really sure if it's the case that he went insane as opposed to he was insane all along and you guys were making excuses for him. And yeah, I mean, someone else I knew, this kind of connection, not a blood relation as it happens. I remember, uh, look, it's hard to anonymize these stories, but yeah, I've known a lot of examples of people where their friends and family around them were saying, "Oh, they can recover, they can get better, they can get back on the straight and narrow," and yeah, they can, but will they? And what are the odds that instead they're going to get worse and worse? There are a whole lot of people who, with the best of intentions, people wanted Richard to win. People wanted Richard to recover. People perceived the redeeming qualities he had, the positive things about the man, and they wanted those to become the primary characteristics in his life. And instead, what they've seen in the passage of years are his negative characteristics, his malignant characteristics, however you want to put it. We've seen those blossom and take over his character, and that echo, that shadow of some aspect of him that was in some way good, we've seen that all but disappear, right? And we've seen him struggle with his so-called mental health, struggle with his sanity, struggle with different kinds of treatment and therapy, including, cures that he devised for himself, cures that he was briefly convinced had worked, and he was a new man, he was a changed man, and so on. And then we've seen him lose faith in each one of those miracle cures. We've seen this come and go. So, guys, let me just ask you, where do you think Hania is going to be 5 years from now? Where do you think James Aspie is going to be 5 years from now? Freely the Banana Girl, Durian Ryder, Aaron Janis. Where's she going to be? What's she going to be doing 5 years from now? I've got to tell you something. My only interest in any of these people and their lives was their potential to do something really positive for the vegan movement in the next 5 years. That's why I cared about them. That's why I talked about them. That's also why I criticized them. They're not. If Vegan Gains is just a video game review channel, if he just plays video games and talks about his expensive new motorcycle and bodybuilding, I'm not interested. I have zero interest in expensive motorcycles, zero interest in him playing video games on camera, right? Zero interest in the bodybuilding. No offense. If I want advice on bodybuilding, I'm not going to listen to Richard. Are you kidding me? Right? There was some level of interest for me in these people because of their potential to change the world, to have a positive effect, lead the vegan movement, right? What's your expectation for any one of these people in the next 5 years? And now let's take a step back and ask, what do we think the future of the vegan movement is in the next 5 years? It's not Aaron Janis. It's not Vegan Gains. It's not Gary Yourofsky. It's not Gary Francione. Okay, guess what? Each and every one of these idols who were lifted up and put on a pedestal, each and every one of them proved to be a false god. And in terms of this non-scientific use of the word crazy, each and every one of them proved to be crazy in a different way. I think James Aspie is a very different guy from Vegan Gains. Totally different. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not saying they have a whole lot in common. The sense in which you'd call James Aspie crazy is very different from what you'd say about Richard. Yeah. So I'm shout out to everyone in the audience. Yeah. So someone was asking, are you talking about a second cousin once removed? My father got a lot of people pregnant. Okay. So, I mean, one of my brothers was given up for adoption, and my family tree is more like a bush, So no, but also some of those people. There's some people in my family who are just not related to. There's one woman who was a friend of my mother during university. She's like an aunt to me. She's more of an aunt to me than my actual aunts, but there's no blood relation. So that's the way family is sometimes. But anyway, Joel asks, quote, "Where are we going to be in the next 10 years?" I just don't understand why I'm the only person out here asking that question. I don't understand this reckless commitment to living every day as if it's your last, which it seems to be, like the default mode of life for my generation is partying like it's 1999. You know, nobody is interested in having a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, so on and so forth. And I just tell you, I don't. It's unimaginable to me, and yet I have it demonstrated to me again and again and again. And what does Richard have an answer to that question? Well, what was Richard's 5-year plan 5 years ago? 5 years ago, where did he want to be today? And I asked him that question when I had the interview with him. And then what is he going to say about his own situation today and where he's going to be 5 years from now, start from now? Okay, guys, so I'm going to read you these emails. When this video is done, I'll take the email and I'll put it on my blog and I'll provide a link in the description. I don't think that's interesting to anyone, but if for some reason you want to read verbatim exactly what got said here, the most important thing to know about these emails is the date. So this is February 1st, 2019. All right. So if you think about when the police kicked down his door, when his gun trouble started, when as in his own words, he had these problems with the court and getting an evaluation by a psychiatrist ordered by the court. He dealt with this complex situation and the question of whether or not he'd have the legal right to bear arms, right? That's what I'm saying. It's gun related, right? Think about how many years this had already been going on for before Richard sent me this email, February of 2019. And the story he's telling today, the lie, the defamation he's directing towards me today, it obviously hadn't been cooked up in his head yet, or he's at the first stages of blaming me for his problems, these mistakes in his life, when this email was sent, right? Okay, quote. So I'm now reading Richard writing to me. The email is titled, "Take Down Your Slander Videos." Okay, quote. "You've made several videos making up lies about me, and you should know some of these lies could get me into serious trouble with the law. You claimed on camera at 6 minutes and 15 seconds in your video titled, 'Vegan Gains is not cured. He's not a new man,' that I own real firearms." Okay, close quote. Now, I shouldn't have to tell you he's lying and misrepresenting things here. I mean, this is what Richard is like, and you'll get to hear my reply, send the emails that ensure, the emails that ensue. If you've watched the video I uploaded immediately prior to this one, you can see I just have him narrating over the footage of him taking weapons out of bags and parcels, And now I say weapons for a reason. Yes, as you're going to hear, that includes air guns, includes these kinds of recreational toy guns. But as is specified here, it also includes real weapons, swords, knives, etc. There are other kinds of weapons here. So as is the case in the video immediately prior to this, you can see in passing, I refer to this as a video in which he was taking weapons out of a bag. It's not the case that I'm not making the specific types of claims that he's alleging I make here. But anyway, so you can see that in the video immediately before this, what I said and the way they say it. You can also see how well-intentioned it was. I mean, you can see I'm raising questions of like, look, man, where is your career going to be 5 years from now? Whether you want to have a career as a bodybuilding expert, a career as a nutritional science expert, as a leader in the vegan movement, or if you want to have a career as a stand-up comedian, or you want to have a career as a filmmaker. There was a time, I don't know if you remember this, there was a time when he said he wanted to be an action star. He wanted to be like a kung fu lead actor in movies. And there was a time when he said he wanted to go into politics and get elected and be Prime Minister of Canada. But my point was, from any of these perspectives, this video of him taking out weapons from a bag and what he was saying during that video, and indeed all the videos where he's talking about this legal situation and him getting a psychiatric evaluation for whether or not he can legally own a gun in Canada, whether or not he's sane enough, I suppose, to own a gun. Well, what are the implications? I was asking that and saying that in a well-intentioned way in that video and raising questions with the audience. All right, I continue here quoting Richard's email. All right. Quote, "You also claim that you came to this conclusion because you claim that I have never said I do not own real guns and because you claim I have an interest in firearms and plan to own firearms in the future, close quote. At this time, there were numerous videos and live streams on YouTube in which he talked about the specific guns he wanted to buy and own. I'd seen them and heard them. Many of you will have seen them and heard them. So the way he's wording this is very dishonest and manipulative. Like as if I've made it up out of thin air that he has an interest in owning guns. He'd stated it himself, and he'd stated it also sometimes when talking about this legal situation he was in, that once he got the legal right to own guns in Canada again, that he would own guns. And we don't know. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Today, does anyone know? You can tell me in the comments. Do you know whether or not Richard owns guns today? Because I've heard him talk about gun ownership a lot. But anyway, you'll hear what he said at this time in 2019. All right. Okay, so at this time he says, quote, I do not own real firearms, Eisel, and currently I am not legally able to own firearms due to my probation. And you accusing me of owning firearms could have serious legal consequences for me. If you do not take down this video, I will do everything I can to take this video down and take down any other videos you've made accusing me of criminal activity. I will first try to get these videos taken down through YouTube's own policies against harassment and bullying. I have already talked to my multi-channel network about this issue, and if that does not work, then I will pursue legal action against you. To be absolutely clear, I want you to take down any videos you've made accusing me of any criminal activity. Close quote. And let's just clarify a couple of things here. One, so at this time, February of 2019, if he believed I was the person who would phone the cops, why isn't that in this email? Obviously, that's a delusion, that's a fantasy, that's a hallucination he made up at some later point, right? Like if that, he would be angry about that here. In February of 2019, Richard, for some reason, the thought hadn't even entered your mind that it was my fault that you had this legal problem with the cops in the first place. So, Richard, this is evidence that you and your wife concocted this myth about me, this lie about me later than February 2019. There is no complaint here that I doxed him. Isn't that interesting? If he blamed me for that, if he had any reason, if he had any evidence to think that I had doxed him, and his specific claim is that I doxed him at some point that caused this legal problem for him, it would have to be before this. It would have to be years before this, right? It couldn't be at this moment. And presumably he would be furious about it right now. He would be complaining that I had doxed him, etc. So those are ideas he invented more recently than this. And although February 2019 is a long time ago, his legal process with going and speaking to a psychiatrist and getting this evaluation and dealing with the Canadian court system, I believe it had been going on for about 2 years already at this point. Again, you guys can compare the exact dates, the exact timestamps in the video. The first time I learned about this legal situation, his legal troubles, his problem with the police, was when he told me in the interview I conducted with him. And that interview is still on my channel. So that's when he first told me. And to my knowledge, he had never said that on the internet before. It's possible he did somewhere that he'd already talked to someone that I hadn't seen. But I was shocked. I hadn't heard anything about that legal problem at that point. So to my knowledge, it wasn't widely known yet. And he intended to go on to talk about it in the future. And he did. He later did talk about it openly and publicly, this legal problem. Okay. So anyway, we have someone commenting. Wolfpack says, quote, evidence doesn't matter to people that have a big ego with themselves. So good comment. I understand what you're saying. But there are two dimensions of this. One, Richard's own attitude. And then two, the attitude of the audience. And the scariest thing of all is the extent to which people in the audience don't care about the truth. People in the audience don't care about evidence. That really scares me. And I've had to deal with that for so many years. I've had to deal with that with Durian Ryder. I've had to deal with that with really small gossip channels making up things, but even like Reddit groups, like people who don't even come on camera with their own face, don't take any risk, that people will just make things up on the internet that normally can be factually verified or challenged equally. Like, so you remember this thing with Foot Soldier claiming that I've never studied Chinese and never lived in China? It's like, dude, there's so much evidence on the internet that I've lived in China and studied China. Like, just Google my name. Like, how could I have faked this stuff? There's so much evidence. People made up all these crazy theories and really believed them, And then sooner or later, they get back to me, like someone like Foot Soldier talks to me directly. And people will say, like Foot Soldier said to me, like, oh, well, everyone says this. What do you mean everyone? Like, did 5 people in your Discord group say this? I don't care if 5 people in your Discord group said it. It's flagrantly untrue. It's obviously untrue. You see a lot of that on the internet. And, I think someone with as loose a grip on reality as Richard can also be taken in by these same attitudes. Richard will influence his audience, but the audience will also influence Richard, right? He's someone who can be influenced that way. I can't be. You guys can't start a bunch of lies that are going to drag me in and pull me along with you, right? I'm not susceptible that way. You can't influence me. But certainly someone like Richard could be. At some point, he started believing these crazy lies he made up about me. And not surprisingly, these lies are blaming me for his problems as opposed to taking responsibility for himself. And let's just note, I feel you, someone else saying they hate it when people appeal to the notion of everyone says or people are saying. Yeah. It's like, I don't, when you say everyone says blank about my sex life, are these people who have slept with me? It's just ridiculous. Look, let's just clarify again. Richard has been honest in talking about his mental health problems. And I've said for years that I gave him credit for that. Like, there are a lot of things I can't give him credit for, but I've said, look, I think it's really healthy to have people come on the internet and talk about what it's like to have hallucinations. I've heard him talk about hallucinations, he said, paranoid hallucinations, etc. That's going to come up in this email correspondence where I raised it with him. I have a really good question for you. If you knew someone who's admitted to the type of paranoid hallucinations Vegan Gains has, do you believe that person should have the right to bear arms? Do you believe that person should be carrying a handgun? Just based on the symptoms Richard has admitted to and discussed in public. Richard has admitted really extreme symptoms of mental health problems, extreme insanity, to be blunt, in plain English, right? But like Richard, you have to have some self-awareness. If you know that about yourself, then you must realize the extent to which you are capable of lying about me and about how our so-called friendship ended and how we became so-called enemies. Like, you must realize that when you don't have detachment and clarity, you can get pretty deep into lying to your audience and pretty deep into lying to yourself. And I just want to say again, obviously I have no, the Canadian legal system, don't even get me started, right? But like, dude, just think about this in terms of the rules of the streets. Like, where I come from, I grew up in downtown Toronto. Look for real. I don't know, Richard. Probably I had more black people going to my high school than you had going to yours. Like, the percentage of African Canadians in Toronto is not that great. But like, I grew up around all races of man. I grew up around Italians, Greeks, Chileans, actually all except Hispanics. There really weren't that many Mexicans. Where I grew up, very few Mexicans, to be honest with you. But anyway, Melissa's seen my neighborhood. But I mean, Jamaican immigrants, Korean immigrants, Chinese immigrants, no Japanese where I grew up. But anyway, almost every, of course, within Europe, Russians, Ukrainians, we all kinds of races, man. But I've got to tell you something. In that part of downtown Toronto, where those cultures came together, sure, there were real minimum standards of morality that got enforced across those cultural lines. And yes, saying that someone phoned the cops on you is a big deal. Saying that someone snitched on you, saying that someone falsely phoned the cops on you, that someone lied to the cops about you, is a big deal. All right. And I can say where I'm from the same block you're from, Richard. Like, as far as I know, we're both from downtown Toronto. I don't think we grew up in such different circumstances. And saying that I doxed you anywhere on YouTube, anywhere on the internet. I mean, I don't care if you're from Sweet Valley High, okay? Doxing someone's a big deal. Like, the morality of doxing someone, everyone understands that. I don't care if you're Japanese. Everyone understands doxing is evil. Richard, I've never doxed you. And I don't even know anything to, like, just be real. I don't know where he lives. I don't know anything about it because I don't care. I've never Googled it. Like, for real, I don't know anything about this guy. I could use nothing. So, because I've never even wondered about it. I don't know. I'm not curious about people that way. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, I'm curious about people politically, philosophically, morally. Like, I want to know what kind of person you are politically. That's what I'm, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm curious about. But, come on, man. The location of his apartment or where he goes to work. I don't want to know any of that. I don't want to know that about anyone. I don't want to know about you. So that kind of stuff, I don't have anything to dox anybody with. All right. Yeah, and look, guys, so it was said really briefly in my earlier video, the video I made immediately prior to this one. I asked the question hypothetically, okay, my critique of Richard, of Vegan Gains, why did it become harsher and harsher? Because the very thing I was criticizing became worse and worse. His actual YouTube content became worse. I've had a few people, report on this. Anyway, look, guys, by the way, I remember there was a really touching moment in a rap song by Little B. I used to shout out Little B on my channel, but anyway, his recent recordings have declined in quality. But, Little B had a rap song where he just stopped in the middle of this rap song. He wasn't really rapping or singing. He just stopped and he said to the audience, he said, look, I want you to know that bullying is serious. If you are being bullied in school, talk to your teacher, talk to the professors, talk to the cops. And it was just the realest moment in a fucking rap song where it's like, look, there's all this boasting about being a tough guy and not going to the cops and solving your problems. And he just stopped and said, look, like, if you are dealing with this, don't be a tough guy, because being bullied in school is horrible and it really matters. And so, look, I'm not saying nobody should go to the cops. There are all kinds of good reasons to go to the cops. You know what I'm saying? So, however, yes, for Richard to falsely claim that I went to the cops and so on, and he seems to believe it. He doesn't seem to think he's lying. He's just crazy. He's out of touch with reality. That's, it's pretty crazy. Okay, so we got some questions from the audience here. I'll stop and answer. Everything cool, babe? Do you want to? Okay. So Melissa's off camera. Good. If you want to sit in the floor with me, if you want to. No, okay. All right. Thanks for the support from Charlie Zander. I'm going to answer these couple questions. I'll get back to reading this email. I hope I remember where I'm at. I think I do. Charlie asks, quote, would you be willing to do a live chat with Vegan Gains to discuss this topic? And is there any hope that you could both reconcile? So you asked the same question twice. Look, I feel like I already addressed this. I don't know if you guys remember the video I did where I commented that Vegan Gains had challenged me to a debate, and then his wife didn't want me to have the debate with him. So that's almost a year ago now or something. I can give you the link to that. Hold on, I'll answer it substantively too. The last time we went through this is 8 months ago. Yeah, I remember it being the better part of a year ago. Here's the video. It's a very short video. So the last time this happened, about 8 months ago, my response was to say, look, I'm only interested in talking to Richard if he would actually read a book. Do you want to grab the book from me, babe? Do you know where it is? Oh, well, great. Melissa has it memorized. And I just said, look, like, Richard, I'm not going to debate or discuss this with you if you don't know what you're talking about. Because from my perspective, he speaks out of complete ignorance and also with a lot of malice and meaningless aggression. I was like, this is a really important book that really addresses the issues. This is, so if you actually want to read this book, and I offered, I haven't read the book, Melissa has. I said, I can prove that I'm putting in the hours. I'll live stream myself reading the book. I don't even know if that's going to take me 10 hours, 20 hours, probably take me quite a few hours to read this book. I can put in the time to read the book also. So it's not just putting the imposition on him. I can live stream myself reading the book, and then we could discuss it. I made that offer 8 months ago. I wouldn't make that offer today. But my point is this, like, what YouTube has become is this really perverse process of the blind leading the blind. And just, what's the point of someone who is as ignorant as Vegan Gains discussing anything? Like, I don't even think he can debate bodybuilding. I'm sorry, but Richard hasn't coached a bodybuilding champion or something. Richard never studied nutrition and dietetics. Richard never got a university degree in kinesiology. Richard has never been a gym coach for even a little league team, let alone an award-winning team. You can go on YouTube and you can get diet and exercise advice from Olympic athletes and from coaches who have helped train a dozen successful Olympic athletes and worked with teams. You can also watch YouTube videos from coaches who've specialized in working with severely obese people. You know what I mean? People who are just trying to get a normal life back, just trying to lose weight. It's a different kind of coaching, different kind of expertise, whether they have background in nutrition or science. But the notion that Richard is in this position to pass judgment on, uh, every province of science, politics, and history, it's just ludicrous. And I'd just be real with you. I think that so someone in the audience says, quote, Richard has a degree in tendonitis. He has a degree in injuring himself. That's right. Anyway, so look, that's the answer to one part of your question. I have to say that this question also just inspires me to reflect for a moment. When I first saw Richard's content, so what is it now, like 8 years ago, guys? I never thought it would get this bad. Like, it never occurred to me that the young, hopeful, well-intentioned, naive kid from Toronto that he was would sink into this dark, malevolent, self-pitying pattern he's been in for so many years. It absolutely never occurred to me that this was the direction his channel would take and that this is the man he would become, and look, guys, I mean, have I ever done a live stream talking about the politics of Jamaica? I mean, there are elections and political, we were just hearing political news from Tunisia. Am I going to do a live stream talking about politics of Tunisia? It's interesting to me. I've heard about it on the news a little bit. I'm aware of the limits of my expertise. I can't lecture on all topics. I can't do a live Q&A on all topics. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of elements. There are a lot of different ways in which Richard is a really bad influence on veganism as a movement and just on the world in general through YouTube. But I think one of the most negative elements of his influence at all is just the idea that he's in a position to sit back and judge, that he sits there like a king, passing judgment on all these things. He has never read one article about. He has never read one book about, let alone, 3 or 4 books with contrasting perspectives. And with Generation X Gamer says, quote, he hasn't been good for a while. I enjoyed his skits, close quote. Well, exactly. I mean, 8 years ago, that's what we're talking about. Maybe look at this guy and say, well, yeah, sure, he's kind of a know-nothing bum, but he can do comedy. Like, maybe he can go further in that direction. Or, maybe you think he has some talent in filmmaking and he can go that direction. You know what I'm saying? You could see still something positive to do. And years ago, more than 5 years ago, he seemed like he had a really sincere interest in helping animals, animal welfare, or however you want to put it. You know what I'm saying? He seemed to care about the suffering of animals. I think it's been a long time since he showed any sincere care or interest that way. So look, sorry, there is actually more I can say about that, because I feel even if it's shallow, that's really an area of critique that applies to many different channels in many different ways. And I think it raises questions we all have to ask ourselves about our own lives. Most of you guys have a 9-to-5 job where you do the same thing every day. And I'll say this is definitely part of my analysis of my own father also. A lot of people have a 9-to-5 job where they're humiliated and denigrated again and again and again every day. So while they're at work, their ego is getting ground down all day. And then maybe when they leave work, they feel they need to kind of recover their ego, their sense of self-esteem, their sense of worth. But some people have a job where they are being flattered, where their ego is getting pumped up all day, 9 to 5, again and again. This was part of my father's problem, right? I wonder to what extent my father could have been a better person if he had been a construction worker, if he had been hauling sacks of cement around a loading dock, you know what I mean, at a dockyard or something. If he just had a kind of normal job that kept him in check. And, anyway, I just say that question and who these people are, whether it's Vegan Gains or someone else, on camera or off camera. And then again, blind leading the blind, the consequences politically and so on. And look, guys, sorry, it's quite intentional. In everything I've just said to you, there was no mention of formal education. I didn't mention having a PhD or a master's degree, because trust me, there are people with a PhD who are just as ignorant as Vegan Gains. There are people with a master's degree. There are people with years of higher education who have nothing more to offer than vegans and who are just as ignorant and just as self-righteous and just as malevolent. But sure, as skeptical as I was about Richard, shall we say 8 years ago, I never imagined it would be this bad. As skeptical as I was about Henya Mania, I never thought it would be this bad. Bonnie Rebecca. Who the hell thought it would turn out this way with any of these people? Who thought it would be this bad? James Aspey, a nice Australian boy who, took a vow of silence for a year. You could think the best about these people, whether it's 5 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever. Well, time has told, we've seen just what terrible people each of these examples is in a different way. All right. So answering your questions, I'm going to return to reading these emails. So great question from Charlie again. Charlie asks, quote, do you believe there is anyone who can be a leader in the vegan movement? What hope do you have for veganism in the future? Are you aware that I've written a book on this topic? And what was the book published about 1 month ago now? Right? Melissa says 2 months. So look, this book is listed on Amazon in each country. So Charlie, I assume you're still here. You can click on this link. I mean, I can give you the link to Amazon.com, but if you're in France, it's Amazon.fr. If you're in Japan, it's Amazon.jp. But this is available everywhere, and it's the minimum possible price. So, do you want to grab me this book, babe? I think it's back there. It looks great, and buying it on paper is only $4. So yeah, I think it's right up top. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. Up there? No? All right. Doesn't matter. Forget about it. It's okay. They can click on the link and see what the book looks like. Most got great question. Generation X Gamer asks if I've got this as an audiobook. No, I have so many hours of podcasts and YouTube videos already from over the years. See the resemblance? No. I haven't aged a day. Anyway, so look, you can see it's not a real long book, but that's a lot of entertainment. It's $1 as a Kindle document, and it's $4 on paper. So for $4, it's a miracle. That includes delivery to your door from Amazon. It's really an amazing. Sorry, just credit to Amazon. I'm not giving credit to myself, but you get this. It is a real book on paper. It's just as good quality as a book from any other publisher that Amazon produces, and they deliver it to your door for $4. But anyway, sorry, to answer your question though a little bit further, Charlie, that is answering the question of what you can do with your life, not just the abstract question in general of some idealized person, what they could do leading the vegan movement. So yeah, it's, sure. I mean, there's a chalkboard question in theory. What could someone do? What should someone do? And then there's what can we do? What are we going to do? And how is that going to fit into a meaningful life? Because, I remember this was said about a certain scholar of Buddhism. I could tell you the whole story of this guy, but he was an early path-breaking scholar of Buddhism who he walked from Hungary to Tibet overland among his accomplishments. It was said of him in this obituary of him I read. It said, he was the epitome of a man who chose not to live, but to know. Like the difference between living and knowing is a choice. He chose not to live, but to know. And, that's not the choice I want anyone to make. I want you to live and know, right? I want you to, I don't want you to choose between life and the revolution. I want you to live the revolution. I want your life to be the revolution and for you to be a part of the revolution while living a meaningful life, while living a good life. I don't want you to live in a cave, There were a lot of ideological movements that are pretty much based on you living in a cave, including what Freely is doing now. It's insane. Freely wants you to go live in the middle of the jungle and grow your own fruits and vegetables. It's not literally a cave, but it's pretty close. It's more restrictive than becoming a Buddhist monk. So, okay, totally reasonable question. I'll just give a short answer to, and then I'm going to continue reading this email correspondence between me and Richard. So William asks, do these other people like Freely the Banana Girl, Richard, etc., do they hold themselves up as leaders because they have more YouTube subscribers? I'm going to be honest with you. I think the answer is different in every case. I would not generalize about these people. And The answer very often makes no sense at all. I would point out, before Freely and Durian Rider started their festival in Chiang Mai, there was a different couple that already had a vegan fruit festival in Chiang Mai. Do you remember their names, babe? The open relationship? Connor and Brittany. Connor and Brittany. Now, Connor and Brittany got famous on YouTube. Connor and Brittany have made a lot of money out of their social media platform. And to my experience, they're fairly honest about that. They talk about how much money. And they have slept with a lot of people, which they talk about. They talk about the sex life, right? So they've had fame, sex, money, right? Vegan fruit festival in Chiang Mai, Taiwan. But they never took the fateful step Freely and Durian Rider took. And that's why, like, no offense, most of you have never heard of them. Or those of you who had heard of them right now are like, oh, yeah, I remember those guys. So, like, that's the point. I know it may sound silly, but Freely and Durian Rider could have had a life much more like Connor and Brittany, right? I could say that about Vegan Gains, too. You could say that about this school. So, yeah, it's not something to generalize about things. Woo! Sorry, another great question. No, guys, I appreciate it. Most of the time, I have no questions worth answering here, and I'm getting a lot of great questions today. So Charlie asks again, quote, can you give your opinion about Gary Yourofsky and his flaws? Why did he quit being a leader of the vegan movement? Now, I would assume I have a playlist of videos at this point on Gary Yourofsky. I have made several in-depth, at-length discussions about Gary Yourofsky, including one that harshly condemned him when he, quote unquote, retired. So, I mean, now Yourofsky has a name that's easy to Google. So, yeah, here you go. Here's a video with a self-explanatory title. Gary Yourofsky, bitter, burnt out loser blames pacifist vegans for his own decision to quit. So that managed to get 8,400 views. Oh, yeah. So here we go. That's the real one I'm thinking of. Quote, martyrs make lousy leaders, beyond Gary Yourofsky, attacking this notion of martyrdom and so on. So that's the link to that playlist. Yes, I have talked about Gary Yourofsky and what's wrong with his approach at length and in depth. But look, with all these people, including Vegan Gains himself, let's just say stupidity is real. And look, two big concepts in our culture. What is stupidity? What is insanity? Right? Like mental health. What does this really mean? Let's move past this, right? There are a lot of people who are stupid who could be intelligent, right? And there are some people who are stupid and they really have no choice. Now, I don't know if he's still in the audience here. One of the very few examples of a YouTuber who talks about his own low level of education and regrets in life is Generation X Gamer here. So I've heard Generation X Gamer say that, when he looks back at his life, he said it in a recent video, he wonders if he had an education more like I do, or if he had experience traveling the world and things more like I do, how his life would be different if he'd lived a life more like mine. Totally good question. I for real, I asked myself if I'd had a life more like yours too. I don't mean video games, but if I'd stayed in Toronto and worked a blue collar job, and one of the jobs I applied for, this was right when I was packing up to leave Toronto and move to Asia, or when I thought I was. Long story. But, I remember I applied for and got a job on a wrecking crew. So this is a demolition crew, but specifically when they blow up a building, and then there are the pieces of burnt metal and not even burnt, but anyway, bent metal and bricks, and you got to haul away, the demolition and clearing away phase of the construction industry. And even that job in Toronto relied on nepotism to get the job. Not literally, but a friend of a friend recommends you and you make a phone call. Even that was, but it was like, okay, yeah, I'm 6'3". I do 200 push-ups. At that time, I did chin-ups too. I don't do chin-ups at the moment. Anyway, I was like, the interview for that job was like, you do push-ups, you do chin-ups, you're over 6 foot tall. Okay, we're interested. Can you wake up at 5:30 in the morning? It was something like that. I had to get up real early to go work on this demolition crew. And my father didn't let me take the job. My father stopped it. My father was like, no, I'm not letting you work in construction. Anyway, sorry, long story short there. Short story long. My point is this. There are some people who are stupid and they don't have to be stupid. They chose to live the life they're living. They're making that choice every day, again and again and again. For example, they are choosing to play video games for 6 hours a day every day, or whatever it is. They're choosing to do drugs every day. They're choosing to drink alcohol every day. Whatever the choice is. Even in some of my own brothers, they're guys who have basically the same genetics I have, but they chose to chase women, drink alcohol, do drugs, live a dissolute life, and they didn't turn out like me. But, there are also people who don't have a choice. And if you've really known people for years, there are some people who are crazy and it's really compulsive, it's really involuntary, and they didn't have a choice to be sane. It's not that they squandered their sanity with drugs and alcohol or something. They were really just dealt an unfortunate deck of cards. Whether we call that insanity or mental disability or a combination of the two, or mental retardation, this term that nobody wants to use anymore, but still really matters medically. No, it's not always a choice. But sure, this is my answer to a question about Gary Yourofsky and vegan gains. Guys, stupidity is real. The fundamental problem with Gary Yourofsky is stupidity, and he has that in common with vegan gains. And in many ways, I think Gary Yourofsky and Richard, they're stupid in some of the same ways. Like, they cope with their stupidity with extreme rage, extreme statements about, wanting to do violent things to people. Like, you can see a lot of things they have in common. However, Gary Yourofsky was a school teacher. Gary Yourofsky held down a job as a supply teacher in the Detroit public school system. I don't think Richard could do that. Yourofsky has accomplished some things in his life positively that I don't think Richard ever could do. But sure, fundamentally the problem is stupidity. Then we have a question. Are we talking about, voluntary stupidity, the stupidity you choose, or a kind of involuntary, compulsory, even genetic, predestined stupidity, insanity, etc.? And bottom line, I don't know and I don't care. Like, I'm not really interested in holding up your soul in a set of scales and judging, Gary Yourofsky or Richard or anyone else. What I am interested in is what I am going to do with the next 5 years of my life. And there was a time when I was coming back to Canada from Taiwan. Oh, sorry, I'm misremembering now. I was coming back to Canada from Yunnan, China, right? Not even Taiwan. I was coming back from Yunnan, China to Canada, and I thought what I was going to do in the next 5 years involved vegan gains. I thought vegan gains and Aaron Janis. I had like a list of people I bought gifts for because I thought I was going to meet them face to face and we're going to be involved in vegan activism and so on. Joke's on me. Not a single one of those people on that list ever met me. I don't think of the people I bought gifts for, I don't think a single one of them ever got the gift, So every single one finked out on me or let me down or it didn't happen. There wasn't a single person to collab with me. Okay. That was season 1 on à-bas-le-ciel. Season 2, I'm playing a different game by different rules, people. But yeah, ultimately, I'm interested in what's going to happen next 5 years. And I want every single one of you to be interested in that too. And guys, it's no joke. The polar ice caps are melting. It's no joke. The parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is increasing year after year after year. Coronavirus didn't slow it down appreciably. You can see on the charts. By the way, it is measurable. It did slow it down infinitesimally. It's measured what a difference it made. The reduction in airplane flights and so on during the coronavirus period. But guess what? The rising rate of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the acidification of the oceans, the impending, ecological, disaster, at least for animals on planet Earth, if not for human beings, we are facing a very finite timeline. And even more finite than that is you are going to die. And long before you die, you might lose the physical strength, vitality, and mobility. Let's do these things. I say that all the time. Sorry, just to make it about me for a second. Sorry. I very rarely speak about myself, but on this occasion. And Melissa, I don't know how you relate to this, but like when I was finishing university, my BA, my first BA, my honors BA in university, I said openly to the professors, like, look, if I don't go to Cambodia now, if I don't risk stepping on a landmine in Laos and Cambodia now, when is it going to be? When I'm 45? When I'm 55? Like, you don't know. Sorry, and you don't know what health problems you get. You could have irritable bowel syndrome. Look, how many million people have irritable bowel syndrome? You could, like, I don't, by the way. I don't have anything wrong with me. But you don't know. You could develop diabetes. You could develop some kind of health problem. You get human HPV, human papillomavirus. You know what I mean? You could have all kinds of problems when you're 45 or 55, and you can't roll up your sleeves and go out and get bitten by leeches in Cambodia and Laos no more. But I was really aware, and I remember talking about that with my professors. It was like, look, if I don't do some of these things now, when am I going to do it? And, in the past, I regretted that decision because I felt like I lost the only chance I had to get a master's degree and a PhD. And now I'm so happy I made that decision because I know how worthless the master's degree and PhD are. I know what's through that door. I know what I'm missing out on. And I understand now why all the people who went through that door and got an MA and PhD, why all of them envied me. To me, it was a mystery in the past. What, you envy me? I'm out here sleeping under a mosquito net in Laos. I was doing something they'd always wanted to do, and they never got the opportunity to do. Okay. Shout out to Melissa. Quote, so this is from Charlie again. Quote, I think you and Melissa make a great couple. We paid the price to be this nice. We have certainly put in the work. Quote, I think you and Melissa make a great couple. Melissa said on her channel how much she has grown as a person with you. Are you happy together now? So, like, the one word answer is yes. This also relates to vegan gains, frankly. One thing I'm reluctant to talk about it because I don't want to give it as advice and make it a model for other people to follow. And I'll be real with you. When I was younger, I was influenced by that kind of thing. I was influenced by people talking about their relationships and looking at things as a model. But, like, this relationship was bad for like 4 years for me, not for her. For me, it was bad for 4 years. And, I was very generous and positive and disciplined and supportive and kept working on it, kept putting the time in. And now I'm happy. Now it's asymmetrical. And I think if you guys go back and look over the first 4 years, that's obvious. Like, sorry, no offense, but basically the relationship was great for Melissa from day one. And for me, it was really bad for a really long time. But, yeah, I just say, I know it's a hacking phrase, but today the relationship is great. And, I said this years ago on the channel, most people have a job where you can't work twice as hard to make twice as much money. You may have a job where you can work twice as hard to make 5% more money, or you may have a job where working twice as hard doesn't change your outcomes at all, right? Most people are in a job where they minimize how much they work because working hard won't really help them, in your relationships, especially your relationship with your wife, with your husband, that kind of relationship. If you work twice as hard, you get more than twice the results. So, yeah, I worked really, really hard through the first 4 years of this relationship. And I would say approximately the last 1 year has been really great for me. If you don't mind, I talk about myself for a minute here. And just for Melissa, it's very different. It's a very asymmetrical relationship. We made tons of videos talking about that in the past. And I would just mention, I don't think you're going to get this kind of reflection from Richard from Vegan Gains. All right. Okay, another great question, but it's going to have to be for another video another day. Quote, what goals do you and Melissa have together personally and professionally for the future? How many hours did we talk about that this week? So sure, there will be a video coming on that in the future, but you're not gonna get a further answer to that now. Anyway, sorry. So at this moment, I just don't want to get into this, but Charlie's asked, how can I support your work? At this point, hey, buy the book, man. And, we'll talk. You can talk to me on Patreon. You can buy the book and do whatever. Well, we'll see what's possible. But, basically, my collaboration with other people depends on talent. And, talent is scarce. But, yeah, for years, I was looking for people I could work with. And I work alone because talent is scarce. Okay, returning to this set of messages. My reply, quote, Richard, and this is a classic Iso-Mazard email in that it has a numbered bullet point set of response. Okay, so numbered list. If any of you have had in-depth conversations by email, You'll recognize the format. So my reply, Richard, 1, did it even occur to you to talk about this in a constructive way? 2, local time here equals 11:23 p.m. So I am replying without going back and listening to the video. However, I'm willing to presume at this moment that you have a reasonable request that you're stating in an extremely unreasonable way, i.e. blackmail and threats. 3, let me just speculate as to what the reasonable request might be that you could have made in a parallel universe. Quote, hi, Eisel, I know that you're not aware that I'm currently living under probation, but under the terms the court set for me, I'm not actually able to own firearms. In your video around 6:15, you suggest the possibility that I could own firearms. It would really mean a lot to me if you could edit the video and re-upload a version clarifying that I have written to you, letting you know that I do not, in fact, own any real firearms, close quote. There are 10 different ways this could be worded that would not have been blackmail. Dude, I don't know if you imagine that you know me, but maybe you've heard me say about 10,000 times that I'm a man of principle and integrity, and I do the right thing only and precisely because it is the right thing to do. So just saying this, like, guys, if you ever deal with these things, like, you can try to motivate the other person. Like, what are you going to do? Bribe me? Threaten me? Like, what about just appealing to me and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do? You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Yeah, it doesn't occur to him. It's because it's alien to him. You know, he assumes everyone else thinks and feels and operates the way he does, which is that they'll only respond to threats of violence, force, compulsion, etc. Stupid. Anyway, but I continue quoting this email. You know, I don't like Durian Rider. He really harmed me. I do not lie about Durian Rider. If I'm wrong, it's not because I'm lying. So likewise, I would not lie about you, Richard. If I've said something in my video that is false or misleading due to either 1, my sincere ignorance, or 2, imprecision or vagueness of wording, I would be entirely eager to rectify that simply because it is the right thing to do. This is apparently so incomprehensible to you that you open your very first email to me with blackmail and threats. You give a lecture about morality and ethics for hours and hours on YouTube. Your debates often evoke formal logic and refined academic concepts of ethical theory. But this really shows how totally ethically illiterate you are and how you're totally incapable of understanding someone like myself. This is deep. Point 4. The video does not state as a fact that you own real firearms. You know exactly what it states. It points out the peculiar vagueness of what you said, and it contrasts that to your statements that you would like to own firearms, that you plan to own firearms in future, etc. And it asks whether or not your vagueness was intentional, because only the firearms shown on screen are fake, here meaning air guns or BB guns. So it is a type of gun, but it's considered not a real gun. However, if that statement is incorrect, misleading, or if you are just personally concerned that it could be perceived as misleading by people in the audience who may not be listening carefully, I would be happy to make an amendment or clarification to the video, i.e. to edit that part of the video and re-upload it, simply because it is the right thing to do. 5, ending this email, really question why you're blackmailing me. You know, Norwegian also used blackmail as the default mode of problem solving with both myself and Vegan Foot Soldier. And that's a real sign of dishonesty on his part. End of the email. Okay, so now we get Richard's reply. This is still on the same day in February of 2019. Quote, I didn't blackmail you. I told you what I was going to do if you don't take down your slander videos. It's a great. I didn't blackmail you. I just told you what I'm going to do if you don't do what I'm asking you to do. Great. Okay. Great clarification. I didn't blackmail you. I just told you what I'm going to do if you don't do what I'm trying to force you to do. Okay, great. Close quote. We continue. Quote, you're making criminal accusations against me which are not true. This puts both... This is exactly the kind of thing he hates on social justice warriors for too, right? Quote, you are making criminal accusations against me which are not true, and this puts both me and my wife in danger. Well, yeah, his life is in danger because of my YouTube video, right? This goes against YouTube community guidelines, so I have contacted my multi-channel network and they will try to get your slander videos removed if you do not do it yourself. Just close quote. Just pause for a second. It's not slander per se to make criminal allegations against them. You can write a newspaper article saying, in my opinion, this person should be accused of this crime and should go to court. That's part of freedom of speech. People do it, for example, against politicians. Other people do that against Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Anyway, the fact that you allege a crime doesn't mean it's slander, doesn't mean it's defamation. That in itself, right? Like, think about the meaning of the word allegation, right? I've made videos alleging Donald Trump committed serious crimes. That is part of freedom of speech. Now, when does that become slander and defamation? It's another question. Great question from the audience. Why is there daylight outside? It has to do with the earth not being flat. That is what it has to do with. Let me tell you. It's a good question. Unfortunately, it'd be a whole other video to get to the answer. All right. Okay, we continue. Quote, if YouTube is unwilling to remove your videos slandering me, then I will pursue legal action against you. I don't care if you make videos criticizing me, but when you make up false criminal accusations against me, that's going too far. Just close quote. Has Vegan Gains ever made criminal allegations against someone else? Have you ever heard Richard claim that someone else was using an illegal drug like steroids? That's a criminal allegation. That has a serious jail sentence statute, right? Like, it's so dishonest and manipulative what he's doing here. And again, if you've just even seen my earlier video, you'll get a sense of both what I said and the spirit in which I said it. Like, that it really is kind of constructive criticism, asking questions about his future, what have you, Well, we've seen Richard in a very mean-spirited way make criminal allegations against a huge number of people, right? I can't count. How many people has he made allegations of criminal activity against on the internet, right? And to some extent, that is a use of his freedom of speech. He is allowed to say that, in his opinion, he thinks this person is using illegal drugs. I mean, there are other channels the fact that something is an allegation or something that is a criminal allegation, that does not prove slander or defamation in and of itself, right? Anyway, talk about the assassination of JFK, making criminal allegations against all kinds of people. I mean, what are you going to say? Anyway, these kinds of things. This is not the criterion for defamation or slander, neither in Canada nor in the United States. And look, I've never heard of anyone's life being ruined by the claim that they're using performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, and so on. The only person I can remember complaining about that was John Venus. John Venus insisted that he didn't use steroids, and it was a serious problem for him in his career to have someone on YouTube say that he used steroids. I don't know the truth of either side of that argument. I have no idea. But it's very rare for people to claim that it actually does impact them negatively, that other people claim they use steroids. But that is a criminal allegation. And that is not the only criminal allegation. You can say that I criticized Richard harshly. Richard has criticized everyone harshly and sometimes unfairly. All right. Anyway, so we continue. This is reading Richard's second email to me in this sequence. If YouTube is unwilling to remove your videos slandering me, then I will pursue legal action against you. I don't care if you make videos criticizing me, but when you make up false criminal accusations against me, that's going too far. I would suggest you take those videos down. There's only one video, by the way. He keeps saying it in the plural, but this only concerns one video. Those videos down. He may not have even watched the videos. To avoid getting community guideline strikes in your channel, which could result in your channel being terminated, and to avoid any legal issues. Yeah, this is not blackmail. This is not a threat, right? No. Anyway. I have no interest in getting your channel terminated or pursuing legal action against you. This is not a threat. I just want to make sure my wife and I are safe. The reason I have contacted you is to avoid having this escalate any further, and I have no interest in continuing an argument with you. End of the email. Yeah, it's interesting, Richard. Now, here you are on the internet years later. And what are you saying about me? So when you wrote this in 2019, did you have any inkling? Did you have any notion in your mind that I had called the cops on you, that I had doxed you? Why is that absent from this email correspondent, Richard? Why did that notion, that allegation, that claim, why did that only creep into your head later? So obviously, as of February 2019, you hadn't made up this story in your head yet, a story that is utterly false, and a story that can't even be true. Hey, Richard, when that happened, when the police kicked down your door, when somebody called the police on you or somebody doxed you, whatever the story is, I don't even know. But according to you, somebody doxed you and somebody called the police. Where was I living? Geographically, where was I? What was I doing at that time? Like, the whole timeline of this makes no sense. And again, he told me that he had this problem with the police, and he got to see and hear how shocked I was. If it wasn't Skype, it was another service like that, but I believe it was a Skype call where he saw my face as well as heard my voice. And yeah, and also we had, I believe, Facebook messages following up after that. It could have been messages within Skype, but whatever, same thing, text messages. I was really shocked to hear that he had this problem with the police. So Richard, I think somewhere you still have those memories buried under whatever bullshit you and your wife made up. Okay, so look, I'm just going to pause. So next is another email from me to Richard, and I think there's maybe one more email after this, and then it's wrapped up. Okay, so look, I've got a challenge. Here I am challenging a donor from the audience. So here's the art of biting the hand that feeds you. Charlie says, quote, I'll give $1,000 to have you and Vegan Gains talk live on YouTube together. Okay. Charlie, I want to publish an illustrated storybook for children. You can hear some of the stories on my YouTube channel right now. There's a playlist for it. Okay. One of my stories I wrote in both Chinese and English. It was actually first written in Chinese. I also wrote the English version, and it's been translated into like 5 other languages. I forget, maybe 7 other languages. All right. Why wouldn't you donate $1,000 to have that storybook illustrated and published? Like, if you have $1,000 to donate, I have something better to do with that for the future of the vegan movement, for this YouTube channel, for everybody. This is not the only example I have. So sorry, I can get that really quick on my channel. The first story I'm thinking of is called Only Earthworms Want to See the Sky. Now, again, I'm not saying this to insult you, but okay, I understand you would get some kind of thrill. So yeah, here's the playlist. And this will also, I think, give you some of the translations of it into other languages, right? So I think, I'll check if that link works. So there you go. You don't have to listen to the video now. That'll just give you the list. There's a story. Oh, whoops. Okay. If you click on that, it actually starts playing the video. That's not the perfect link to send. Yes, even earthworms want to see the sky. So let me just see what happens when you click on that link. Okay, but that story, to publish that in English and Chinese, to publish that in some combination of languages, that could be so meaningful for so many people, like not just me. I have had people tell me they broke down weeping when they first read that story. Actually, 2 of my Chinese teachers, 2 different Chinese people, said they broke down weeping when they read that story. A lot of people have said it's really a tremendously moving, tremendously meaningful story. So there you go. That link should work. It'll give you, and you can see, I think there's a Dutch translation there. I forget if we have a German translation. So I think Swedish. I forget how many languages there are in there, right? We had a Japanese translation, but it wasn't of good enough quality, so I actually took it off the internet. But there used to be a Japanese translation. This is only one example, but like, I've been on the internet for so long talking about really positive things we can do to change the world, and dude, it's been crickets. All right. Now, another example was the storybook I wrote about Socrates. So here, I think you got this in at least 2 languages right now. So this has been translated at least into, I think, German and French. So this is one of the stories I made about the fables I wrote, allegorical fables of Socrates. There's a whole sequence of them. Fabulous book, and not just for vegans. I think the vegan message is in there in one of the fables. I think so. 1 out of 7 stories or something deals with veganism. But this is a fantastic story, and this was this. So good. This guy said, "Crickets?" ? You have a ton of laughs every time I tell a joke. Yeah, not crickets in that sense. But anyway, so look, this is another storybook for children project. And in this case, it is partly about the vegan message, but it's partly about challenging Christmas and challenging kind of the indolence of our culture and really trying to offer something better. So that $1,000 would be plenty. I mean, I'm just saying you can go on Fiverr right now. I don't know if you know this website, but there's different websites where illustrators will work. And probably $1,000 would pay for the illustration, and then you could also probably pay for the actual printing. Let's say I have a number of hardcover, like I don't know, $700 to go to the illustrator, and then be $300 left off to somehow promote and get the publishing rolling. But anyway, you could look into, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all $1,000 have to go to the illustrator. I don't know. You can look into it, and it'd probably be different for the two books. But sure, just $1,000 could make a big difference in either of those projects. And those are not my only ideas. So, this shows how much I've changed. So there is a video I made about the decline. Here we go. There's a video I made titled Veganism Declined by 50% in 2 years. So this is a long video, but if you go to the very end, I would say approximately the final 5 minutes of this. This video says, and I was really appealing for donors and people in the audience to help me. At the end of this video, again, approximately the last 5 minutes, maybe it's the last 7 minutes, I don't know. But anyway, you can click around a little bit when you do it. At the end of this video, it says, guys, there are so many projects I want to do if I had a larger audience or if I had donor support to do them. And it gives all these positive examples of things I'd love to do. Now, I've changed. Some of those ideas today I wouldn't do for $1,000, and I wouldn't do for $5,000, and I wouldn't do for $10,000. If it's $1 million, okay, I'll think about it. But, for years, I was talking about all these positive things we can do. And you guys know I talked about opening a vegan bakery and all these different things. So, dude, yes, I have been looking for support from donors as well as collaborators and so on for years. But, like a pissing contest with Richard, like, getting into I get it. Look, I'm not saying this to you. I totally see how you could get $1,000 worth of entertainment from me and Richard Vick. Totally. All right. And there was a time I offered to do boxing matches with Richard. I was in better shape than I am now. I mean, I really have to hit the gym. But I remember I was in pretty good shape. And I said, like, Richard, you challenge everyone else to a fight except me. Why don't we do a boxing match? Why don't we do whatever? Why don't we do this? I will choose not to tell you what he said back. What he said back was pretty dark, actually. But anyway, there have been times when I offered to, in good humor, do a boxing match for charity, for the vegan movement. It's not to hurt somebody, There have been times when I did that. And I see how that could be worth $1,000 to someone or $10,000 to someone. You know what I mean? But, look, I am not Jason Blaha. What can I tell you? I have real aspirations to change the world. And, even just the video I uploaded before this one, I asked the question and look, I can ask this to Melissa too, like for Melissa reflecting on her own life and for you in the audience. But I asked Richard, Richard, what do you want to do with the next 10 years of your life? Do you want to be a personal trainer? Do you want to be a nutritional science expert? Do you want to be a stand-up comedian? Do you want to be a filmmaker? Like I just say, I'm not trying to force Melissa to become a personal trainer. But regardless of the career, like we all have to ask ourselves that. And like really, I think you have to ask yourself also, like if you want to be a creative person, if you want to be a whatever it may be, you might want to do comedy, you might want to do filmmaking, you might want to do documentary filmmaking. This kind of conflict for the sake of conflict with someone like Richard. It's not the way to move forward. And I just remind you, so I think, Charlie, you were here when I said it, but 8 months ago, the last time this was proposed, I was trying to get Richard to raise up his own level of education by saying, well, Richard, how about if we're going to discuss this issue, we both read a book first from cover to cover and then discuss what's in the book instead of this just being about you, making an exhibition of your ego. But anyway, so Charlie is saying he's willing to give $1,000 to publish the book. So let's get some emojis. Let's get some applause emojis for Charlie, okay? Charlie has stepped up to give $1,000 for the publication of the book or the illustration of the book. Thank you, Charlie. Charlie, out of the 6 million people or something who've seen my videos, you are the first to offer to pay $1,000. So I've had a lot of offers from a lot of people. We've got about 6.2 million people have seen my videos. You're the first person to offer to pay $1,000 to get the book illustrated. But I have, so we've got some applause emojis for Charlie. But yeah, I have had a lot of people telling me how much that those books, both of them, really moved them emotionally. But a lot of people writing in saying how much it meant to them and can they get illustrated and all this stuff. But yeah, not that many people put their money where their mouth is. And look, people with money who are willing to use it charitably to change the world are scarce. So Charlie, you're already part of a scarce. But people with the talent to change the world, that's even more scarce. And yeah, for years I was looking for a vegan illustrator who could do it. So sure, but $1,000 goes a long way. And guys, in case you don't know, I mean, I've still got this court case with Durian Ryder. That's all been paid for by donations from the audience, and I'm still broke. Okay, so continuing with reading these emails, guys, if you have a second, hit the thumbs up button. Do it. It'll help people find this relic. Yeah, I try to make videos that are still going to be meaningful if I come back and watch them 5 years later. If you come back and watch this 5 years later, think of the memories it's going to bring. Gen X gamer, 5 years from now, you're going to have great grandchildren. You're going to be sitting and watching this. Oh, I remember those days. Anyway, yeah, I try to produce all my content at a level that's meaningful enough that I could watch it again 5 years later and not feel that it's a waste of my time or anyone's time. And by the way, on that heading, all the videos I made criticizing Richard, I think all of them hold up. I would go back and watch any of those videos again today, and a lot of them shock me with how interesting. Like, there are interesting things that come up in passing in those videos that I've forgotten about. I'm like, oh wow, that's an interesting point. So if I go back and watch my old content, even something that's basically cussing out Richard, and look, sorry, Generation X gamer, he already has 6 grandchildren. Well, you could have 8. Anyway, 5 years from now, your grandchildren could be old enough to listen to me cussing out vegan gains on YouTube. Just joking around. I've never tried to calculate how many grandchildren my father has. I don't even want to know, because my father had 9 kids, so I don't know how many grandchildren he had. But I'm doing my part to contribute to the world's overpopulation as we go here. All right. Anyway, sorry, this is a digression from a digression. Yeah, I don't regret the videos I made criticizing Richard, and I don't think any of them were mean-spirited or bad in their intentions. I think they all hold up. And if Richard had the self-discipline to listen to any of them today, it could have changed his life in the past, and it could still change his life now. All right. So here's my reply to Richard in the sequence. Richard, you have been inaccurate. I'm choosing not to say dishonest, but inaccurate in claiming that my video states, circa 6 minutes and 15 seconds, that you currently own guns. Do you want me to quote exactly what the video states? Just pause, close quote. I never understand these people, whether it's Vegan Gains, whether it's Vegan Foot Soldier, whether it's German. So many people getting these things, whether it's a natural vegan, Swayze. It's crazy to me the extent to which they just fabricate and hallucinate what I said in videos. And it's like, dude, is your memory this bad and distorted? Or what? Because you can just, so when it's a YouTube video, you can click, and English is your first language. There's nothing, you could just go back and hear exactly what I said. But yeah, a lot of these people I've dealt with, I think it's not so much that they're being dishonest with me, it's that they're dishonest with themselves, and they're a little bit crazy. And for some reason, they're not able to really hear what I'm saying, and they don't really remember what I said. And then in their own mind, it gets distorted. Anyway, obviously now, as the years have gone by, Richard has distorted this whole episode in his memory and blamed me for all kinds of things. All right, so we continue here. But I ask him, do you want me to quote exactly what the video says? Why are you lying to me about it? And what's the point of lying to me? You think I can't check? You think I can't click on my own video and check what I said? All right. Continuing, quote, I have not responded with hostility. I responded by pointing out, 1, that you were issuing threats and engaging in blackmail, and 2, that this is really absurd because, as you may know, I am really genuinely willing to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. So just pause. My point here is, even if I don't like Durian Ryder, even if I don't like Vegan Gains, I'm willing to do something just to help them out. Just if someone writes to me and says, hey, look, this is fucking up my life, I'm willing to help, man. I'm willing to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. Why try to blackmail me? like as your first move. Why try to threaten me or bully me? Like, it's just stupid. Anyway, don't. And in his case, he'd known me for years already. He'd seen so many. He should know what kind of guy I am. He should know that he can appeal to that side of my character instead of trying to manipulate me in this way. And instead of lying to me, it's really a bad move. And now he's lying to himself. Lying to the public. Question from Charlie again. He asks, quote, "Still broke? Question mark. Don't mean to pry, but how much do you make a month and what are your monthly expenses? I would like to support you, Melissa, financially." So, Charlie, you may not know this, but I'm one of the few YouTubers who has stated on the internet exactly how much money he makes. We've been joking for some time that season 3 on this channel will begin when I become a wage slave again, when I'm working at McDonald's or when I'm working at 7-Eleven. But it is very much anticipated that this channel is going to return to being me having some kind of minimum wage job like this. It is. I will foreshadow a little bit. That's unlikely to be here in Canada. We assume we're going to move permanently to the United States of America. Location undisclosed, and not for the sake of secrecy, but we don't know exactly. We're talking about exactly where we're moving. But yeah, no, minimum wage employment is very likely in my future. And sorry, again, a contrast to Gen X Gamer. So Gen X Gamer has talked about this. In the past, he used to work a really physical minimum wage job, but he moved up from being a laborer to being a foreman. And then he moved up to other forms of employment. Well, guess what? I'm overeducated, and my transition is in the opposite direction. Okay, guys? I've got a university degree, and trust me, I am better educated than most of the professors, most people with PhDs. The people I've met face to face, like, sorry, sit around. It's depressing. I mean, I wish there were professors I could look up to, but there aren't. But yeah, I'm overeducated informally more than formally, and yeah, my employment prospects, resemble those of a high school dropout. So yeah, and I think there are plenty of high school dropouts who are going to be earning more money than me in the future. So yeah, and I'm not mousy about this. I've stated on the internet exactly how much I make from YouTube, exactly how much I make from Patreon. And the only period in my life in which my earnings were enough to pay my rent was when I was living in Taiwan. So that's now about 3 years ago. And that's because my rent was so low. So I'm sorry, I forget what my rent was. But like, let's say my rent was $200 a month or something. Like, it was something like that. So it was like my rent was $200 a month. And let's say I was making $400 out of YouTube. That was the only period in which that was true. So anyway, but look, in other ways, my audience has been wonderful to me. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, needless to say. And look, sorry, just to be real, just say something nice about my audience. Melissa and I were talking about this the other day. I know all kinds of people who've written books. Dude, like the vast majority of books, you might as well take your manuscript and dump it into the toilet the next time you take a dump. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going out with the sewage to, have seagulls fly over it in circles over the deep blue sea, man. That's where your fucking manuscript is going. Like, if I had published this book, the book I already have published and the next book I'm going to publish, if I had published it without having an audience on YouTube, right, it would be a book by a chap about a thing. I mean, some guy wrote a book on some topic, and not even your own friends and family will read that shit. So, I completely owe it to my audience, developed here on YouTube, that book will frankly be immortalized. Look, guys, I'm not humble. I think I've written a better book than Gary Yourofsky ever wrote, or Gary Francione ever wrote, or hey, Earthling Ed. Yes, I think I'm a better author than Earthling Ed. And Cosmic Skeptic, there's my competition. Better book than Cosmic Skeptic will ever write. And whether quickly or slowly with time, in terms of that genre, sure, that book's going to be remembered as one of the most important books in that genre. And I don't have a lot of competition. I've already named my competition. Gary Francione, Gary Yourofsky, etc. Well, guys, if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for this audience, and each one of you who clicks the link on Amazon, each one of you who writes a review on Amazon or writes a review on Goodreads, you are creating the legacy of that book. That's what's going to make that book reach people 10 years from now, 20 years from now, etc. Oh, like a knife through the heart. Yuval Noah Harari. Did you get his name right? I know who you're talking about, but I don't know how to spell it. Oh, like a knife. Oh, sharper than a serpent's tooth. Jesus. You compare me to Yuval Noah Harari. I'm flattered and insulted at the same time. All right, we continue with this email. Hey, guys, great. Thanks for showing up. Sometimes I do these live streams and people just sit there in stunned silence. I appreciate that too. Sometimes the response to the audience is like, "Whoa, man, this is heavy." People don't want, but it's good. We managed to really involve the audience in a positive way here in keeping score on vegan gains. All right, it's something we can all participate in. All right, so I was just saying, look, I am genuinely someone who's willing to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. Continue. Sometimes the right thing to do is to clarify something vague that could mislead people, even if there was no intent to mislead them. Uh, that's a great lesson in life. You guys may, but sometimes you say something on the internet that hurts someone's feelings. You didn't mean to say what they hear, or you said something and it never occurred to you the audience would interpret it or misinterpret it that way. Okay, sometimes the right thing to do is to clarify something you said that was vague, right? All right, next paragraph. Sometimes the right thing to do is say, quote, "Look, I have explained my perspective on this. However, somebody may be hurt by the discussion for these reasons," close quote. All right. Sometimes the right thing to do is to explain, quote, "When I made that video, I was unaware of factors X, Y, and Z. And now Richard has written to me to inform me of X, Y, and Z," close quote. Right. These are constructive ways to solve the problem. And editing a video only takes a few minutes, e.g., to upload a different version of the video to reflect the correction. Okay. Now here's where I turn it on. Have you ever done this, Richard? I'm just going to pause. Okay. So Richard has said things that defame me. Richard has said things that slander me. I can't make a list of all the people he's defamed and slandered. I can't make a list of all the people he's just insulted horribly. But here I am, spelling out for him the methodology of being a good person on the internet, basically, right? It's like, well, how about you, Richard? And the reality is, no, Richard only does something when somebody threatens to shut down his YouTube channel, when they threaten to take him to court, et cetera. Exactly the steps he set out. This is a kind of psychological projection where he's presuming the only way to negotiate with me is to bully him the way someone else would have to bully Richard in turn in order to get these results from him. He's not willing to change what he has to say, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Charlie again asks, quote, "Why not come to California? The weather is great and there are still areas that are affordable." Oh. So Charlie, I'm surprised. I guess you haven't seen, I made a sequence of videos. From my perspective, it's a really interesting sequence of videos. Maybe no one else thinks so. That's okay. But I made a series of videos talking about being a filmmaker. And they conclude with a video saying we're going to move to Los Angeles. So over the last 2 years, we have talked about that a lot, off camera and on camera. So it's a really long sequence of videos. The last part is titled, I'm going to give you the link here, but this is, believe it or not, so this is 58 minutes long, and it's not the whole story. So you get 58 minutes here, and as I recall, that concludes the sequence. And the videos before it are kind of philosophizing about YouTube, about making documentary films, about being a creative intellectual. This really relates to Vegan Gains too, because it's what Vegan Gains could have and should have done with his life and didn't do, whatever you want to say, it's talking about the life of the mind and pursuing political change through the arts, whether that's through stand-up comedy, documentary filmmaking, narrative fiction filmmaking. So yeah, I thought about that. I don't get the books paid, but I could hold up a stack of books I've bought on this about screenwriting and filmmaking. And we talked to film schools in California too. We talked to film schools in LA. So yes, California, it has been, I would say it's still probably option B on the list. But I think the greater LA area is no longer an unchallenged option A. But no, it definitely still is on the list. And yeah, sorry, but to answer the other part of the question, you asked what motivates you to come to the US in general. The positive side of it is exactly what you get in that video, moving to Los Angeles to pursue filmmaking as a YouTuber. The positive side is, and by the way, sorry, if you read my book, it completely spells it out for you. If you read Future of an Illusion, it completely tells you why I want to move to the United States. The negative side of it isn't stated there. The negative side is the critique of Canada, of what's wrong with Canada. Shout out to JJ McCullough. So, partly the question is, what are you moving to? And partly it's what are you moving away from? Like what are you escaping from? And then what positively is drawing you there? And yeah, I mean, I have other options. I could move to the south of France. I could move to Israel. We considered moving to Greece for some time, but sure, I could live in Thailand. I could live in Taiwan. I could live in communist China. I could live in a lot of places. But sure, the model of how to be a dissident intellectual, the model of how to be an intellectual who tries to change the world, set out in both of my books, Future of an Illusion and No More Manifestos. I think if you read those books, you will understand very well why I want to move to the United States of America and why I do not, for example, want to just kind of retire to Thailand, where I would have an easier life and a more pleasant life in many ways. Why I'd rather be in the struggle of living in poverty in the United States of America rather than living in, frankly, relative affluence and wealth and ease in Thailand. That's what it's about for me. No matter where I live, I'm going to be an intellectual. But how can I live in a way where I'm an intellectual, where I challenge the status quo and try to change the world? And sure, Los Angeles it's one of the options on that list, no doubt. All right, so we return to reading this. Hard-hitting question. When are you and Melissa getting married? Soon. I will reveal this now. I asked Kevin Smith to officiate our wedding, and that motherfucker never got back to me. So if any of you in the audience, I mean, probably 1,000 people will see this video. If you have a connection to Kevin Smith, you write to Kevin Smith and say, look, motherfucker, you're vegan now. This dude is vegan. This dude's a leader in the vegan community. You have to officiate the wedding, asshole, okay? You're both atheists. You're both vegan. Whatever. We're both wannabe filmmakers. Yes, I would count both myself and Kevin Smith as wannabes. All right? Okay? Kevin Smith, and I'm certain Kevin Smith has seen a few videos on this channel. I won't say why. I strongly suspect Kevin Smith has seen at least 1 or 2 videos on this YouTube channel over the years. Kevin Smith, I asked him to officiate our wedding, and it's a crying shame that he hasn't gotten back to me. Don't act like you've got something better to do, Kevin. Don't act. Come on. We know. And Kevin, you officiate weddings all the time. Kevin Smith will officiate a wedding for any loser who stands up in the audience and says he's a big fan of Star Wars. Like, hi, I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and, I wanted to get married, so could you officiate my... Every time he says, oh, yeah, I'd be so happy to. Kevin Smith, okay? And Kevin, it's going to be a vegan wedding. Come on, you're going to get to eat the vegan donuts or whatever. I don't know, whatever. It's going to be a sober vegan wedding. So there you go, man. Anyway. Yeah, to be fair, I was a very harsh critic of Kevin Smith back before he was vegan, so he might remember that. But hey, now we're all vegan, so it's all gravy. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, all right. Okay, so I asked Richard, have you ever done this, Richard? Have you ever shown this much goodwill towards someone writing into you, saying that you'd made a video that hurt them? If someone wrote to you saying that your video had been unfair to them or misrepresented them in some way, maybe you have. But if you have, it's certainly remarkable to me that absolutely no method other than threats and blackmail occurred to you. Now, by the way, guys, I can remember some videos that Richard deleted from his channel. You can too. I can remember some videos about allegations of a 4-letter word that begins with an R and rhymes with cape. I can remember some videos that Richard deleted from his own channel. Maybe he got threats of this kind that he sent him. Maybe someone said, hey, that they were going to sue him or take him to court. I don't know. But Richard has deleted some videos. I can't remember any time when he took a video and made these kinds of amendments I'm talking about, where you censor it or add a clarification or say, hey, look, like Richard wrote into me after to say he doesn't own any real guns. He only owns BB guns. And I forget the other kind of gun. But as I say, there were other weapons on screen, things like swords and knives and crap. So it's not the case that he was only showing toy guns. That's really misleading. And anyway, what he said himself on camera is already damning enough. It shows why the controversy exists. I mean, what can I say, Richard? You're not controversial for no reason. In any case, we continue. Quote, now from my perspective, you are also lying, but perhaps you're merely being inaccurate or vague, and perhaps you're not intentionally deceiving me. You've made one claim so far. You find what I say around 6 minutes and 15 seconds of one video upsetting because you think some people may interpret or misunderstand it as meaning that you currently own real firearms. Well, that is not what the video says, i.e., I do not make that claim, and I can quote to you exactly what I do say. But I can still sympathize with the notion that you'd want to publicly clarify that you do not own real firearms, and that I have already said that I would be pleased to upload an edited version of that video that clarifies this fact. So, e.g., for example, quote, Richard wrote in to reassure me that he does not currently own any real firearms and that he is under terms of probation that do not allow him to do so, close quote. All right. That would be a fix/correction. Newspapers do that all the time. So again, whenever you're having trouble thinking about the ethics or morality of what we do here on YouTube or what we do on Twitter, I think a comparison to newspaper editorial policy is often useful because newspapers do make mistakes, right? All right. Okay. Now, instead of responding positively to the cooperative spirit of that message, you write back saying, quote, you're making criminal accusations against me which are not true, and this puts both me and my wife in danger, close quote. So that's him. I'm quoting him back, what he says to me. I'm left to suppose that this is inaccurate in much the same way as your earlier claim, whether that's because of dishonesty on your part or perhaps just because you're emotionally overwhelmed. Okay, period. Again, fast forward to 2022. He's now made up a story in his own mind that I called the cops on him, that I snitched on him, that I had something to do with doxing him, right? He didn't even have that concept. So yes, the possibility that he is emotionally overwhelmed and letting his imagination run away with him, that was possible in 2019. It's still possible today. But what he's saying can't possibly be true. I mean, it's also the case that he has no evidence to prove it. And I have evidence of what happened at every single stage of this, including the interview you gave to me, Richard. Like, what am I supposed to say? It's just ridiculous. But of course, he has a larger audience. So probably the lies he's telling are going to become immortalized on the internet. It's so discouraging that there are going to be so many mean-spirited people. I mean, that's why defamation law exists, right? That's why you can go after someone for defamation in court, because it's so damaging. Someone like him, someone with a big audience, makes up a story about you. Probably fucking 2 years from now, somebody's going to walk up to me at a vegan restaurant and say, hey, bro, that's not cool that you talk to the cops about vegan. Someone's going to step to me about this shit. That kind of crap happens to me. Now, yes, it mostly happens over Skype rather than face to face. But it has happened. People have stepped to me face to face in real life. And as I like to say, I'm not a nice guy. I have handled threats of violence face to face in real life. It went well for me. I'm not a nice guy. I'm just nicer than these guys. And I'm not a tough guy, but I'm tougher than these guys. All right. So we continue coming to the end of this email correspondence because you'll be surprised to see that Richard has nothing to say in reply. All right. However, I've shown you already that I'm willing to make corrections and amendments to anything I've said that's incorrect. Why not respond positively, constructively, cooperatively, and let me know what other quote unquote criminal accusations that are not true you'd want to see rectified? Because again, before he was saying there were like multiple videos I've said something in, and that like there were multiple things I've said that are not true. And no, it's just one thing in one video at one moment that he's actually complaining. So like, what else are you claiming I said? And even then, the one thing he complained about, it's not remotely true. He's grossly lying and misrepresenting what I said in that video. All right. So this email ends with me saying, I honestly do not know of any. There's a lot of criticism of your conduct in these videos. But, for example, my commentary on the psychology of self-justification involved in your formation of your opinions on gun control policy, ... Nothing in that analysis has even the aura of criminal allegations. So he did not reply after that point. Okay? So one day later, I wrote to him again. Boy, how quickly can I read this? So, okay, guys, I'll answer your questions for 1 second, and then I'll read you the final message in this, which is me writing to him again, and he doesn't reply. He doesn't reply after that ever. So he goes away and sulks, even though I'm saying to him, look, I'll change the video for you. Just out of goodwill. You don't have to threaten to sue me. You don't have to, whatever. I'm happy to make the change because you wrote in to clarify, anyway, you wrote in to request this clarification just to help you out. But yeah, I do think this final email raises the more interesting philosophical and political question here. All right, guys, what did I miss? What is it? We managed to do a whole broadcast without ODS contributing. Alexa, what's the time in Zurich?
In Zurich, it's 6:15 a.m.
Come on, you should be up. You should be on YouTube. Come on. I got some regular contributors who didn't show up today. Oh, tough question. So this is really on topic too. Who's the better cook, you or Melissa? Have you ever caught each? Oh, great question. Different question. Have you ever caught each other in a lie? Whoops. Okay. What is your biggest critique of each other? Okay, so three very different questions. So look, I'll just answer the cooking one first. Melissa kind of missed out on the time of my life in which I cared about cooking, I've got to say. Babe, do you want to turn that light on too? Sorry, because it's now getting dark. Yeah, that's good. Just add some more ambient light. Some of my other girlfriends I really worked hard to cook with. Only one of my girlfriends has ever been Asian, by the way. But like I had an Asian girlfriend, and I remember I cooked for her mother and stuff. There were some girlfriends where I really felt pressure on me to cook at a high level. But in this relationship and by this stage of my life, I'd really settled into this, model of a meaningful life and being an intellectual where, I talk a lot about not wanting to waste time. And so we had a period where I used to make pancakes for Melissa every morning. And we had a period where I made pasta for Melissa pretty much either for lunch or dinner every day. I made it very frequently. I mean, it's not 7 days a week, but still we've had periods where I did a lot of the cooking. But, really for most of the time we've been together, it's been about not wasting time, partly so that I have time to do things like this with you lovely people. So just to give a really brief example, I was listening to a podcast today. This was while I was at the gym lifting weights. I'm listening to a podcast. It's a podcast about politics. But these guys digress into mentioning like, oh, did you watch the hockey game? And oh, how about this sports? They're mentioning like 3 different sports teams. And I'm sitting there thinking, how can anyone have the time to watch sports on TV? So, the time I have right now to do this broadcast, it comes at a cost. And no, I do not. Like currently, I do not put effort into making lavish meals for Melissa. And I'm just being honest with you. Some of my other ex-girlfriends and ex-wives, I did put a lot of effort into cooking. I remember at a certain point with my ex-wife where she complained. She was like, look, you used to put in so many hours in the cooking for me every day, and now you stop. I remember like saying to her, like, do you have any idea what's going on in my life? Like, do you have any idea what I'm doing every day? Anyway, so not the worst fight we had or something. But no, some of my other relationships I was putting a lot of work in. And then the other thing is, you remember, we went to baking school together. So look, I just say, I do not put pressure on Melissa to cook lavish meals for me. And she does not put pressure on me to cook lavish meals for her. We very much, we do not live to eat. We eat to live. We eat in a very efficient way. I sometimes joke that we're like astronauts on a spacecraft where it's just putting in the minimum. We get our protein, get our vitamin pill, get back to work, whatever. So that's mostly. But, once in a while, Melissa has made some lovely birthday cakes for me. You've made cakes for me on other occasions too. So once in a while, Melissa bakes a cake for me. Once in a while, one or the other of us puts in the effort to make some special, but most of the time, and guys, sorry, the other factor is the quality of ingredients here in Canada is horrible. So like we've cooked together in France, we've cooked together in Greece, we've cooked together in China, we've cooked together in Taiwan, and it's so depressing. Cuisine in Canada is so depressing. Like, I feel like no matter how much effort you put into cooking in Canada, the results are going to be mediocre at best. It's really bad. So, sorry, I don't know if that was too long or too short an answer to your question. But yeah, in terms of this relationship and so on, it feels like it's right. So, have you ever caught each other in a lie? So, look, I mean, it depends on what you mean by a lie. I have certainly caught Melissa in wishful thinking that was false. You know what I mean? Where Melissa had kind of let herself think the best about something. But, a lie, and like the answer might be no about a lie. Like, we're very honest with each other. But like, the way people normally use the word lie. But when I say wishful thinking, it'd be more something like, oh, it'll be fine. Or we're going to say, it's not going to be fine. Yes, that kind of wishful thinking, evading a problem, not dealing with a problem, which also is partly just laziness. Like, let's be real. Like dishonesty is one thing, but lazy. Oh, I'm just going to not deal with this problem and imagine it'll go away, or imagine that kind of thing, which we don't in English isn't normally. It's not quite a lie. Yes, I've had problems most of the way, and I'm 14 years older than Melissa. It's an asymmetrical relationship. No offense, but I don't think I've ever lied to you about anything, big or small, not even about rap music or something. And I also don't think there's ever been a problem with me being evasive or wishful things. I don't think that anything like that's happened. So yeah, and there have been things that have been hard to talk about. There have been things where it's put as where it's hard to tell the truth because you don't want to hurt the other person, but I tell the truth. That's the way I've played it, and long term, it's been the best for this relationship. But again, sir, I'm kind of reluctant to set this as a model for other people. Some of you can't live by the rules I live by. What can I say? Oh, that's funny. So when I talk to our robot friend, someone else who owns Alexa, their Alexa robot answered the same question. Alexa, what's 2 + 2?
2 + 2 is 4.
Anyway.
I was wondering, did you have to try more than once to get my attention?
Alexa, stop. All right, just catching up with your questions, then we're going to wrap up this correspondence for myself and Vin Gaines. So Wolfpack says, quote, the best thing about having an ex-wife is that the in-laws are included in the divorce. No, Wolfpack. The best thing about being a YouTuber who gets a divorce is that your in-laws are on YouTube denouncing you. That's my ex-wife's father has come on YouTube. I think it's a matter of time before my ex-wife's mother comes on YouTube. We'll see if my ex-wife herself comes on YouTube or her new husband. The dude, any of them can come on and say what a terrible human being I am. And any of them can come on YouTube and say what a terrible human being I am. And in the parlance of our times, I'm here for it. Yeah, so here's someone who says he both coaches and plays minor league baseball in Mexico, but he doesn't have time to watch baseball. Yeah, that's right. So Wolfpack, if you don't know this, I just made a post on my blog about who my father really was, because there are people who kind of make up myths about my father. I would not describe my father as famous, but maybe it runs in the family. He had a certain degree of micro fame, like he was famous within a small field, famous in the world of museums and art galleries, And one of the things I've said to people about my father, just in trying to challenge the myths that grew up around him, was to say, look, I knew who my father really was. I remember the guy who would fall asleep on the couch watching baseball. That's who my father really was, And I remember my father, this guy was supposedly so cultured and refined, being eager and in a hurry to buy an American newspaper, like when he's in Europe or when he's in Asia, so that he could check the baseball scores. That's who he was. So yeah, my father was not a real intellectual. He really wasn't. Many people assume that I have this in common with my father, but no, we're very much a contrast. And he was exactly the kind of guy who didn't read a book in 5 years, but he was taking that time, and he didn't talk to his own kids. He didn't actually parent his own sons and daughter. No. But he was taking that time and putting it into watching baseball. Whew. So look, a great question. I mean, Melissa, I don't know how you feel about this. You're probably not going to answer. Quote, if you and Vin Gaines became friends again, what would your advice to him be? So this continues. Do you want an apology from him? What message do you have for him now? Close quote. So look, Charlie, it's a totally great question, but this is now 2022. Years ago, I came on camera and said everything I had to say to the guy. All right. And some of you will remember this right away. Some of you could probably give the link to the video in which this happened. But I made a video in which I talked about the fact, like, look, Richard, you could have built on the positive things you had going on and taken it in a positive direction instead of a negative direction. I gave a whole bunch of examples. But one of them that I know pissed him off because he wrote to me about it. I could read you that email now too. I said to him, look, Richard, you were a critic of Islam. Most of his videos about Islam have been deleted, right? So some of you remember that, and you can see it on other websites. You can Google around. He made some videos really harshly criticizing the Muslim faith, really harshly criticizing Islam. It's like, well, Richard, like there's been a civil war going on in Syria. You could have gone to Syria. You could have done humanitarian work in Syria. You could have studied the language a little bit. You could have gotten to know the history. And like, I'm not suggesting he would gain a positive appreciation for Islam, but he would have developed a more nuanced critique of Islam. He would, he would become a more profound. And you would have done the humanitarian work, and he would have matured as a person. But it's like, dude, instead of sitting on your couch playing video games, like you could have done something positive. And you could do that completely cynically as a filmmaker too, right? Like you could do that just to make your YouTube channel more popular. Like most people would. Like it would be virtuous. Like, hey, here I am taking selfies with Syrian refugees. Here I am on the Syrian border. Like, but I'm not suggesting you do it cynically. I'm saying sincerely, like Richard, instead of just sitting on your couch and passing judgment on Muslims, you could go and see the human reality, the political reality, the historical reality as it unfolds. And maybe you wouldn't help anyone, but you would become a better man. Now, I'm sorry, from memory, I gave some other examples. I think one of the other examples I used was talking about the border wall with Mexico. Like, you can actually go to the Mexican border. I remember saying that, I think, in relation to Jacqueline Glenn and some people too. I think that's an example I use more than once. So I apologize, that's not in that specific video. Like, instead of just sitting here and criticizing Donald Trump, you can go there and see the reality and talk to those people and cross into Mexico and see the reality of the drug trafficking and the criminal gangs and both the wealth and the poverty and what's going on. You could, you can do it on a humanitarian basis. In Vegan Gaines's case, he could set up a vegan pancake. You could give away free vegan pancakes to all the fucking refugees on the Mexican border or whatever. You could vegan pancakes, and you could cook the pancakes, then you could put them through the wall. I don't know if you've seen that, but the wall has gaps. The wall it's really a fence. You could fry up vegan pancakes. Say, hey, you could say in Spanish, I'm promoting veganism. You could give them the pancake through the fence. It's all kinds of creative things you can do to deal with political reality, right? So I'm sorry, I definitely gave the example of Syria. I remember that. I forget if I mentioned Mexico or some examples. My point is, it's not just Syria. It's not just Cambodia. Like the opportunities are everywhere. Like you can do humanitarian work and you can combine that with documentary filmmaking, and you can grow as a person, and you can learn, and you can challenge your own ignorance and challenge your own assumptions. So that was the advice I had for him. And he wrote back to me insulting my penis size. That was his response. I can get the email for you now and read it verbatim. I've already put it on the internet. It was unbelievably stupid. His response was to claim that I was lying about my penis size and that I should put naked photos of myself on the internet to prove it. And then he said, oh, sorry, or are you too busy helping refugees in Syria, doing humanitarian work for the Syrian civil war? He sent me this really nasty, stupid message. That's his response to that. So that shows what Richard is capable of. And guys, why do I do this? I don't think Richard can take that advice and use it positively. Someone in the audience can. Like maybe 1,000 people are going to see this video. Share the link. Please share the. Probably some of you have grandchildren and nieces and nephews who would benefit from hearing this discussion. Somebody can take that advice and think about it and change their fucking lives, and including other YouTubers. Someone out there with a YouTube channel is going to think, wow, that's a great idea. Why don't you? Now, today, times have changed. Today, it could be you go to the Ukrainian border. It could be you go to Ukraine. It could be you do all kinds of things. I'm sorry, there are all kinds of. You can go to Hong Kong. You can go to Myanmar. I personally care a lot about Myanmar. I think I've broken down weeping talking about the politics of Myanmar not too long ago. Like I really care about politics in different parts of the world. But you could go somewhere where you don't care about the politics at all. Hit the books, learn the language, learn the history, learn the politics, challenge yourself to grow, And even if it proves to be impossible for you to make a positive difference in the world, if it proves to be impossible for you to do something humanitarian or for you to make a political difference, you can still make YouTube videos that are about the impossibility of accomplishing that and that address the aspiration, that address the ambition and the tragedy of your failure to accomplish something. You can do all that and more. So sure, I've told Vegan Gains everything I had to say. And what he wrote back to me was a boast claiming that he has a nicer penis than I do. And bro, this is now 2022. We've all seen your penis because you put it on the internet. And bro, I am not intimidated. Okay. In the penis Olympics, all right, bro, you may bench press more than me, but even then, how much does he bench these days? His bench press isn't even that, but like, bro, okay, I mean, if this is a pissing contest, but yeah, it was incredibly stupid. It was incredibly mean-spirited. It was incredibly in bad taste. And it showed him utterly refusing to get the point of what I was saying. Refusing to hear the advice and refusing to take it in the spirit with which it was intended, And sorry, look, I'm like, so in that context, to reduce it to a question of penis size, it was unbelievably stupid and mean-spirited. Yeah. But yeah, he's been a hypocrite on all these things. I can remember him insulting others for doing porn, and he went on to do porn. I'm sorry, but I remember this very distinctly. Maybe some of you will remember this video too. He was attacking a male bodybuilder for just putting up erotic images of himself on the internet. And they were the same as like any sexy Instagram model. You know what I mean? I remember him really viciously attacking this other guy. I thought to me, it just seemed like jealousy. But I remember thinking well, what, are you morally opposed to bodybuilding? Like if you're attacking this guy for this, like 80% of male bodybuilders or something put up sexy pictures of themselves like this, whether it's for a gay audience or for a straight audience, or it's so they meet women or just to make money as a bodybuilder. So I've really seen him in a mean-spirited way attacking other people for this stuff. And he went on to do porn himself, Anyway. So yeah, look, that's the answer to that question. And look, I think it's a topic for another video, and I think I have talked about it in a few different videos. But what does the word apology mean to you? I think if you haven't really examined it, it's very much a kind of figment of the Christian imagination. I think it's a kind of relic or a kind of fossil left over from Christianity. And when you denude it of that Christian cultural context, when you rend it away from Christianity, the meaning of the word apology and what it means to you personally and pragmatically and in your relationship with your own father, your own family, your own work colleagues, what does an apology really mean? I think that's something important for each of us to challenge and examine and come to our own conclusions about. I've already done that, but I've got to tell you something, just even living in a culture like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, a lot of these concepts, they don't mean the same things there that they mean to it. Like apology, even telling a lie and telling a truth, even though it may be subtle, the fact that those are non-Christian cultures, it's very different, what that means. But the concept of an apology, the concept of making amends, as an utterly non-Christian person myself, that's something I've had to not just philosophize about, but it's something I've had to think about and apply, in my own life, and so on. I would point this out too. So this is a little riddle within the English language. Suppose someone said to you after you'd been waiting for a long time, under whatever circumstances, they asked you to wait, and then you had to wait for an hour outside a changing room while they were trying on clothes. And then they came out and thanked you and said, look, I really want to thank you. You've been incredibly patient. What if you said back to them, I haven't been patient. I was only pretending. Someone who pretends to be patient is patient. you can't be inwardly impatient and outwardly patient, right? Like the outward reality of being patient is what it is to be patient. Some things are like this. What if someone asked you, when did you forgive your father? Like, when did you guys reconcile? But they said, when did you accept your father's apology? And when did you forgive him? So getting at this concept of apology. What if you said back when you were asked this question, I didn't forgive him. I just pretended to. I didn't accept his apology. I just pretended. In the same way, there isn't actually a distinction there because we're just talking about something on that surface level of behavior, right? We think of forgiveness as something profound. We think of an apology as something profound, and it's not. We think of patience as something profound, and it's not also. That's also very Christian. Patience is itself dripping with medieval Christian cultural assumptions left over from the Dark Ages. Patience is a virtue, very, very Christian thing. Okay, there are some more great questions here, but this will become a 3-hour podcast or something if I answer them all. Yeah. So look, sir, two of these questions are related. I'll try. So Charlie asks also, quote, if money was not an object, what would you be doing in your life right now? So I think I have made videos talking about that, and the links I've already sent you, Charlie, talks about that too. But look, let's relate this to vegan gains. So money is not an object for him. What the fuck is he doing with his life? I wish I could do exactly the things I talked about. I wish I could fly to Syria. I talked to Melissa. Okay, I'll give you a couple examples right now. One, I wish I could go to Syria, whatever, 5 years ago now or something, when Syria was really popping. Sure, I wish I could go to some of these war zones. I've said to Melissa very recently, I wish I could go to Ukraine. Of course I do. If I had the money, of course I would have gone to Ukraine the day before it started. Just saying honestly, because I knew it was coming. If you were paying attention to politics, of course I wish I could go to Ukraine or right on the Ukrainian border. So yeah, probably I could go at least to Lviv or something. Whatever. Sure, I wish I could go to Ukraine. I wish I could go to Syria. But there were places I wish I could go within the United States. When the riots started in I'm always going to get this wrong. In Minneapolis, I always think Minnesota instead of Minneapolis to just get them confused because of the words. I wanted to go to Minneapolis when the George Floyd riots were happening. I had no money. I still have no money, and I don't have a big enough audience. I couldn't turn to my audience and say, hey guys, could you donate, say $2,000 so I can buy an airplane ticket and go to Minneapolis and stay in a hotel or whatever, I'm sorry, I'm saying $2,000 off the top of my head. I don't know. Maybe $1,000 would be enough for that actually. But anyway, no, there are things I really want to do politically. And there were events I've wanted to attend that are normally in Washington, D.C., like political events. They might be in London, England, or one of the other political centers of the world. But Washington, D.C. most often, but sometimes in Brussels, in one of the political capitals of Europe. There are trials going on at The Hague in the Netherlands. I'd love to attend. And in terms of languages, I can do politics in Asia. I absolutely wish I could do those things. And that's, an implicit criterion there. I'm just talking about what I would do alone. If I could put together a show more like the Young Turks, in one respect like the Young Turks, meaning a circle of people working together, there are many, many ways in which I do not want to be like the Young Turks. Horrible TV show. But I'm just saying, like, when that started, what was it, 4 people working together, maybe 8 people working together? Like, if I had a team of 7 other people working with me and I had the money for that, of course I would love to do that. I've talked about that for 8 years or something on YouTube. Of course, talent is scarce, money is scarce, but sure, there are tons of really palpable examples of what I would have done if I had the money, but including, so I don't know if I mentioned this before, I think I never have, but I knew one person who was in Minneapolis and her apartment was close enough to the riots. She was just saying this to me as text messages. But she said she could hear gunshots and she could see the flames out of her window, like kind of just out at the edge of her window. She was close enough to the riots. And she was saying this to me as she was saying she was packing up to get out of town. I forget. She went to stay in some friend's apartment in another part of town or something like that. But she was there. And, again, that just made me think, oh, wow, could I buy an airplane ticket? Could I go? even if it's just to talk about it on YouTube with you guys, of course. So if I had the money, and again, that's not that much money. I mean, you can tell me how much that would have cost. Any of these examples. But look, guys, there are elections in Cambodia right now. Now, I wish I could say there were a lot of people who would make a more meaningful YouTube video about the politics of Cambodia. I don't believe it. I really wish I could be there covering and talking about the politics of Cambodia. Absolutely. Now, guys, today I can speak this much Cambodian. Oh, my God. So Cambodian's a really hard language. It's much easier for me to speak Laotian than Cambodian. Much easier for me to speak Chinese, too. But sure, I wish I could be covering Cambodia. I wish I could be covering Myanmar. There are a lot of things I'd love to do if I had more money. And guys, sorry, the other thing that we don't even mention here is what difference could more money make in terms of my situation with my daughter and my endlessly ongoing divorce from my first wife. My honest answer to that is not much. I don't really think it could make that much of a difference. But sure, it'd be nice to think if I had more money that somehow circumstances could get better for me and my daughter. I'm just being real with you. At this point, I've learned a lot about how the French legal system works. Probably it's just hopeless. There's some problems where even if you spend $1 million on them, it's not going to get any better. The lawyer I have right now, I think, is really good, actually, my lawyer in France. But she's honest with me. But yeah, sure. That's another question, as to what extent could my daughter be a part of my life? And my daughter could be here with me on YouTube at this point. Why not? Sure. So yeah, now look, guys, and sorry, I just wasn't repeating myself, but Charlie, I wanted to publish several books, and money has been a huge problem. And it relates to my daughter, it relates to vegan activism, it relates to changing the world. I wanted to illustrate and publish children's storybooks. And I can't do that because, one, I don't have the money. Two, I don't have other people that work with me who are talented. So sure, I'm sorry, but I already talked about that earlier in the video, so I won't talk about it further. But there are publishing projects. There are conference projects. I talked with Melissa about this just a couple days ago. I would host like scholarly conferences. I can't say academic conferences. I would invite other people to write papers about politics, including vegan politics, and meet and have conferences and then publish the collected papers on Amazon, as books, and come here on YouTube and present the edited footage of what we said and what we debated at these conferences. Would love to do that. But one, money is scarce. Two, talent is scarce, And for years, back when I had a little bit of money in the bank, I proposed that. And I proposed paying for it completely out of my pocket. But, yeah, sure. So one category is things I would do totally alone. And another category is things I would do working with other people. Sure. What can I tell you, man? I have all kinds of frustrated ambitions. And part of the philosophy I'm setting out in my current books, both Future of an Illusion and No More Manifesto, 2 different books. Pardon me. No More Manifestos, plural, is how you can live your life, how you can be a dissident intellectual and pursue political change in the absence of all those things. So yeah. Shout out to Generation X Gamer. We've kept him up past his bedtime. You can watch the rest of the video tomorrow when it's a better time in your time zone. Okay, great. Camera's going out of focus here. All right, guys. So I'm going to try to wrap this up. Reading the So we have a comment from the audience that this person has literally seen all of the porn that ever existed and has exhaustive knowledge of every porn star. Well, were you winding up to telling us your evaluation of Vegan Gains and his performance and so on, or no? I mean, it just seems like it's setting something up. That seems like that comment was leading somewhere, but it doesn't. All right, great. All right, so one more question here, and then I'm going to return. Wolfpack asks about advice on learning languages. So I have a whole separate YouTube video about that. Sorry, a whole separate YouTube channel about that, which you may not know. So my name is Aysel Mazard. I have a channel called Aysel Mazard. It's not popular, but I recommend you watch those videos. And I'm very careful about giving advice to strangers. I would never casually say to a stranger that they should learn Chinese or learn Laotian or learn Javanese or learn Korea or Ojibwe. I am very, very careful in giving that kind of advice to people. But people I know or people where I talk to them, Sorry, actually, I just made a post on my blog about that too. So this is someone who'd written to me several times, was asking for advice on becoming a scholar of Buddhism and learning a specific language or a number of languages in relation to that. So you might want to check out both those links. One of those linked to the YouTube channel. My response to that person, where I said to him, "Look, probably you should not be studying these languages." But yeah, it's when you think about what decisions people make that are really going to change every day of every week of every year for the rest of their lives, learning a language changes you. Learning a language changes who you are. It changes the whole rest of your life, even if you quote unquote forget it, you know. All right, so I'm going to continue with this. This is the final email in the sequence because Vegan Gains does not reply again. Richard, okay, so we'll make a video proceeding with your statement that 1, you currently do not own real firearms because the police do not allow you to under the terms of your probation. 2, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have lied and continue to lie in claiming that you do not own any real weapons. You claim that all of your weapons are fake and toys because the knives, assault batons, swords, etc. are indeed real weapons. These were shown on camera, right? The word weapon is not the same as the word gun. Sorry. And the concept of a real gun as opposed to a BB gun, probably not worth debating. Okay. Point 3, you still want to own guns in the future, comma, as soon as you are allowed to do so legally. Is this correct? Do you want to clarify what your position on firearms ownership is? New paragraph. Do you believe that someone who has hallucinations of the kind you describe yourself, including auditory hallucinations, hearing voices that are not there, having paranoid and aggressive reactions to strangers, with the specific delusion that these people are trying to kill you when they just say hello to you or when they just shake hands with you, etc. Do you think that sort of person should be allowed to own, use, and carry firearms? If I describe that person to you as someone other than yourself, would you agree with the statement, quote, the government is justified in doubting their responsibility to safely use firearms? Do you think that the military would be willing to recruit or employ someone with this list of symptoms and to trust them to use guns responsibly in a high-pressure situation? Would you not agree that someone who had your checklist of symptoms might be disqualified from owning or carrying firearms in at least some democratic countries? Richard, when people write into me saying, quote, he should be on psychiatric medication, close quote, I write back saying, no, he should just take a vow that he's not going to do any of these things again, close quote. You say that you're a changed man. What you're showing me is that you haven't changed. You presented yourself as a victim of censorship. You then become a hypocrite the moment it suits you. Quote, you're putting me and my wife in danger, close quote. As if this were any more true of you than, for example, a bodybuilder claiming that his life is in danger if his apartment is searched for illegal drugs because you have accused him of using illegal drugs on your YouTube channel. Richard, you have just been morally grandstanding about the right of free speech, critique, and satire. And then the moment it's convenient for you, you do everything in your power to oppress someone else while continuing to play the victim card. You know that I could make a telephone call to the Toronto police today with no difficulty and simply express my concerns about you. And that would more likely entail problems for you and your parole officer. I didn't do that. I engaged in exactly the kind of rational philosophical discussion about ethics on YouTube that you claim to support and defend, but not when it questions your own most sacred value, namely wasting time playing video games. Newspapers make criminal allegations all the time. It is part of journalism. If a newspaper says the alleged bank robber, that's an allegation. It is reporting an allegation. The etymology of the two words is clear. In Canada, telling the truth is always a defense against defamation. I have been telling the truth. You have completely failed to provide even one example of me lying or making a criminal allegation against you. However, yes, for example, you have openly talked about using illegal drugs, for example, hallucinogenic mushrooms, on your own YouTube channel. So if I report that you've used illegal drugs, then I am making a criminal allegation in the same sense that a newspaper is in reporting the facts. That doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. Talking about criminal allegations is one of the most important parts of protected freedom of speech. There are legal consequences for making reckless and irresponsible criminal allegations, but that's not what I've done in my videos. You are the one who has made irresponsible criminal allegations, accusing Doreen Ryder of rape, for example, although this is certainly not the only example, and you have been callous and cruel towards others when doing so. Richard, you've been a complete hypocrite here. You've become everything you always said you despised. You are, 1, playing the victim, and 2, at the same time, you're really engaging in bullying and harassment yourself, claiming, quote, I'll shut down your channel, and, quote, I'll sue you, in response to legitimate criticism and satire. Really think with some detachment and objectivity about the contrast between the criticism and satire I've directed towards you and the criticism and satire you have directed at so many other people. Even think about the difference between the criticism I've directed at you and your replies to me, just insulting me, basically. For example, saying things about the size of my penis. The golden rule would be pretty easy for you to apply here, Richard. Why can't you act toward me in the way you'd want others to act toward you?